episode of the Women Writing Intentionally show with Jenny Alberti and Tracey Brown. Today we are joined by the beautiful Denise Duffield-Thomas, and she is here to share with us today a little bit about her publishing journey as an introvert author and entrepreneur. So if you aren't familiar with Denise already, and I know lots of you are, Denise is the money mentor for the new wave of online entrepreneurs who want to make money and change the world. She helps entrepreneurs like you charge premium prices, release the fear of money, and create first-class lives. Her books, Lucky Bitch, Get Rich, Lucky Bitch, and her newest book, Chill and Prosper, which some of you may also know as Chillpreneur, give a fresh and funny roadmap to living a life of abundance without burnout. Her Money Bootcamp has helped over 8,500 students from all around the world. Denise likes to refer to herself as a lazy introvert, a Hay House author, and an unbusy mother of three. She also owns a rose farm and lives by the beach in sunny Australia, which, as you know, I'm Australian too. So thank you so much, Denise, for coming and agreeing to join us here on the Women Writing Intentionally show today. We are so excited to have you.
I'm excited too, and I'm excited that you came with props. I should have brought my prop. I've always got a million books lying around my office, but I've just been filming, and so sometimes I'll be like, do I have even one of my own books here? So no, I'm so excited because, you know, writing is just one of those things that so many people want to do, and it's such an emotional thing. It brings up so many of our money blocks. So I'm always thrilled to talk to, you know, fellow writers and aspiring writers too, to inspire them.
Amazing. So I know that Jenny's got some questions for you because we actually, it was so exciting for us back in September when you had Chill and Prosper was actually on special. And Jenny was launching her book, Quiet and Badass, at the same time. And you guys were kind of like tag teaming for the #1 spot, which was super exciting.
So much fun.
So many good screenshots. So Jenny, did you want to take over and ask Denise a few of your questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Denise, that was the highlight, honestly, of the launch, was just my book being screenshot next to yours. That was just, it was so amazing. So, and I know a lot of the authors that were in the book as well, that was also a highlight. Just, it doesn't even matter. Our book is next to Denise's. It was so exciting for all of them too. So, I have some very specific introvert questions that have to do with being an author and writing. Because for me, that was one of the things that, you know, I had a coaching business, and it was really hard for me to put myself out there, to always be on, to always have to, you know, really push and talk to people all the time. And so I found out that I can actually market myself and be very comfortable and confident in doing that through writing. So I think that one of my most my most burning questions for you is, with writing, what do you think? How do you think, I should say, does being an introvert actually enhance writing? How does it come through? And for you, how does it enhance your writing? How is it your superpower with being an author?
Yeah, great question. First of all, I would say a lot of people express surprise when I say that I'm an introvert. And I think it's because, you know, growing up, I was a dancer, I was a children's performer, and I was always kind of used to having to perform if I needed to, you know, and even now, if I'm doing a book event or a book tour or something like that, part of it for me is putting on hair and makeup and costume and performing, and makes it so much easier than just to be like, oh, here I am. But I think for introverts, because we are in our head so much, it's almost like we're always writing, even if we're not writing. And that's especially true for me, especially when I'm trying to go to sleep at night. That's when I get all my best ideas, when I'm in the shower, if I'm walking, if I'm getting a massage. Like, I think we are such internal creatures in so many ways that we're just constantly, going and thinking and processing things.
Oh, that's so true. I know that it's true of me because it's kind of like I'm always having conversations with myself in my head about whatever is going on. And it always makes it really easy to transfer that onto paper and to be able to, tell my story more, because I am always inside my head, right? Like always, there's always something going on, right? Regardless whether people are around or not. So yeah, that's such a great point. What about the challenge with being an introvert though, and being an author? What challenges do you run into? Because that being very helpful to you, how does it challenge you?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned before about like putting yourself out there, and I've found for me, my, I guess, secret of that is I write for myself a lot of the time, and I create things for myself. And so I've never really worried about putting things out there because I don't, in a way, it doesn't matter if people don't like it because I've written it for myself. And I think you have to, same with books, right? You have to write the book that you want to read, because then it almost doesn't matter if other people don't like it because you've written it for yourself. And so I've always been really good at, just wanting to share what I'm passionate about or whatever. But my other tip for marketing is that I batch things. And so I do it when I feel like it. I schedule it out. And so something's always out, even if I don't feel like it. And then when people respond to something I've batched, then I can respond to them. It kind of wakes me up again. I kind of go, oh, I wasn't feeling so extroverted or ready to talk to people, but I love to respond,
Yeah. Yes.
I think and then that way you kind of do it and you're promoting yourself whether you feel like it or not. But I would say one of my challenges though is, this sounds really horrible, but because a lot of my work is, about, just friendly, down to earth advice. And so a lot of people feel like I'm their friend, and so I find it really hard to, as an introvert, feel like I have to be friends with a lot of people, which I want to help people. I absolutely want to help people. But sometimes I'll get, people like, do you want to hang out? And I'm like, I'll come on your podcast. I'm totally happy to come on your podcast. But I think even my real life friends sometimes struggle with that, where I'm just like, I don't want to hang out, And so when then you have a much bigger audience, like it becomes more, there's just more requests, there's more requests, there's more energy that's directed at you. Sometimes projections. I find that a little bit challenging, but I think I'm quite good with my boundaries. And I'm just like, no, this is how I love you. I love you by creating things for you. And I realize I can't love everybody one-to-one, and that's totally okay as well.
Yeah, that is a excellent point, that we have to set boundaries in anything that we do, but especially as introverts. I think that we tend to also feel guilty from time to time for setting those boundaries, which makes it hard. But as our audience grows, and as we get more people paying attention to us and seeking our advice, and like you just described, seeking friendship, it becomes even more important to protect those boundaries energetically too, right? Because you have to continue creating and continue doing the things that you're here to do. And sometimes it's really draining trying to please everybody. So I think that's exceptional advice.
It is. And it's almost like, for me, I can be social if I've planned it and thought about it. And I remember I was at a conference and someone was like, oh, well, we've organized a meetup and we'd love you to come and join. And I remember just thinking, oh no, like I hadn't planned for it. I hadn't prepared myself. And I was like, oh, you guys just meet up. And I felt really horrible about it, but it was just something I hadn't mentally prepared myself for. And it felt really funny because, of course, if you're an extrovert, you would love to do that. You'd be like, oh my God, people are throwing me a party. oh, this is amazing. Whereas I was just like,
Totally
I was
guilty.
horrified. I know, I was absolutely horrified. And then, I felt really bad because I was just like, oh, no, you guys just do it. I'm just going to literally just sit in my hotel room. And that's the thing, even when I do book events, like I love when I do events and it's planned, people will be very gracious and say to me, hey, I know you're an introvert, like, but is it okay if we have a photo? And I'm like, yes, that's literally the container that we're here for. Like, I'm in it. This is great. And then I think then they don't believe me that I'm an introvert because I'm like, yes, of course, this is great. And I love it in the moment, but I literally have to take like a day to get over the peopling.
Yeah. What are some of the ways that you recharge, Denise?
Literally just sit and do nothing and like play gardenscapes on my phone. That's it. I love going to the cinema as well, and I love going to the theater. So I think it's just like being in a dark room where you can't talk to anybody is is the thing.
Admit it,
Yeah,
that's why you actually bought into theatre productions this last 12 months, right?
This is true. But I also have a standing date with one of my friends. We go to the movies every Thursday at 11 o'clock. And we kind of just see anything that's on and she's an introvert as well, but it's just enough time where we can just see a movie, have a little catch up before and after. But it's just like a really good time in the week just to go, and especially since now, it's not even about people. I would say for a lot of us introverts and myself, our phones, we're always available. And that's something that I'd really like to work on over the next year is just the amount of energy that I do from social media. One thing actually that I did in the last year, it sounds silly because of course I should have done it ages ago, but in a lot of my client groups, I used to use my personal Facebook profile rather than my business profile. And so now I've separated them out. So if I am on Facebook, then, because I would see stuff come through and I'd go, oh, I'll just answer. It's just one or two things. And it's not like it was a burden to do it, but I just never had any mental separation from work, and that's helped a lot. But I want to go one step further and just be a little bit more intentional around social media use, because I know I want to write a lot next year, and I think that's just what it's going to take.
Yeah, you don't really notice how much of a toll it takes on you, because like you just said, it's like, oh, no big deal. I'll just answer, I'll just respond, I'll just whatever. But it adds up, and it actually really does take a toll on you, especially over time, and days after days of telling yourself, oh, I'll just check real quick, especially for being an introvert. It really does add up, and then you come to a point where you don't want anything to do with it, and then you can't continue to be creative and do the things that you want to do. So I think that's again, right, it goes back to boundaries. That's another really important boundary to set to protect our energy as introverts, especially as writers, because we need to have that time and that space to be able to let the thoughts and the creativity flow. And while we don't think that that's really a blockage, it actually ends up being a block, right?
Yeah, as you said, it adds up. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, even as an extrovert, like I find social media can be really draining. And so Denise knows Leonie Dawson really changed my perspective on how the social media hamster wheel when she quit social media last year. And that's definitely something that made a huge impact on how I would like to work with social media moving forward.
Same. I love Leonie, and the thing that I love about her too, she is such a prolific creator, and it's something that I really aspire to, and I need to change some of my habits to be able to do that, because I know I've got it in me to be very prolific like she is, but a lot of other things compete with writing time for me.
Well, it's a little bit the mum life as well as, but yeah, I mean, you are running programs that are constantly, in requiring time and effort, as well as then writing books. and create, you've literally just revamped the whole Sacred Money Archetypes course and re-recorded things like that. So that takes a lot of time, and running a podcast. So it's not like you don't have enough on your plate.
All of those things. And it's funny, a lot of those things converged in 1 year this year, because I try and re-record my programs every kind of 2-3 years max. And sometimes they're not in the same year. This year, everything was in the same year. And I knew that, and that's fine. And that means that next year is going to be much more of a writing year for me, which I'm really, really looking forward to. But already things are coming in where I'm going to have to say no. Like I've got a couple of speaking things next year, and I know once people see me start speaking, they think that that I'm available to speak more, and so speaking creates more speaking opportunities. And I just really want to make sure that next year I can write, and that means saying no to some things. It's hard.
Yeah. So Denise, I have obviously, you are one of my favorite introverted authors, but I would love to know who has influenced you, who has inspired you that is also an introvert, whether it's an author or an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah, good question. It's funny because a lot of the people that I'm inspired by, I think, are extroverts, I think. Yeah, I mean, obviously one of my big inspirations for life in general is Oprah Winfrey. But and I don't know, is she an introvert or an extrovert? Has she ever talked about it?
I don't know that she's ever actually said.
Oh, you might have to quickly Google that one. But the thing that I really think about at the moment that I'm inspired by her is that when she did her show, she did 2 shows a day, and she really went from the start. When we talk about boundaries, she used to meet every single person after the show. Like she would, sit and be there for as long as people wanted. People would ask to go back to her office, and people would ask her for money and all these things. And I remember her saying, like, when she just had to be like, well, I'm the talent and I have to turn up and I have to do my thing, but that doesn't mean I have to be available for everybody, all the time. And that really inspired me. And so whenever I go and do my video batching, which I just did some last week, I think of Oprah, like, going up to her little her private parking space and then getting her hair and makeup done and then being the talent. And that's definitely what I aspire to, because I think you have to protect the thing that only you can do. And that's the tricky thing, right, in business, in life, as a writer, is that you can't do everything. And I mean, if you do, it's really tricky. So it's like, what is the one thing? Where is my talent? Where am I the talent here? And how can I create other structures around so everyone else knows their job and I know my job? So that's something that's really inspired the way that I create my business. And I definitely know that I can go to that next level in that too.
Okay, so I did just Google it, and apparently Oprah does consider herself an introvert. In her 2018 interview with Amy Schumer, the two of them actually bonded over their shared introversion, and Oprah revealed that she often retreats to the bathroom during dinner parties in order to recharge. So there you go.
See, that's funny. That's really funny. I actually didn't know I was an introvert until I think really late 20s, but I used to go to like dance parties and nightclubs and just go sit in the toilet for a while. And at house parties, I'd be like, I just need some time. And I'd just sit there.
Well, there you go, modeling after Oprah without even realizing it.
There you go. There you go. But in terms of, like writers, I really love, again, prolific writers, because I aspire to be that. I am not a prolific writer, but I look at people who have like multiple series. One of my friends, Teresa Reed, she's an astrologer, and she is like such a prolific writer of astrology books in lots of different ways. And I think she's an introvert too. But I think that's who I really aspire to be. People who just like head down, bum up, write. Whereas, yeah, I'm such a procrastinator as a writer. I really am. So, yeah, I want to bring some more of that into my life.
So I just want to touch on that for a minute, because you've mentioned before in Money Bootcamp and other places that one of the things that helps you to stay accountable when you write is that you work with a book coach. Is that right?
Yeah, I've written all of my books in different ways, to be honest. So the first book that I wrote, well, I've written heaps of books actually, but even before then, but Lucky Bitch, I literally pre-sold it and had to finish it. So that was like doing a university assignment that had to be done. Get Rich Lucky Bitch was based on my course. So I had a lot of course transcripts, and I hired someone to help me put all the transcripts into some order. So at least I didn't have to start from scratch. When I first wrote Chillpreneur, I hired a book coach to do weekly accountability, because I knew I had 9 months to write it, which seemed like such a long time, but I just knew if I didn't create space for it, then I would procrastinate until 2 weeks before and then completely stress myself out. So I hired a lady called Petra Martin, and I had to send her a chapter every Friday. She would send me edits on Monday, and I had to send her back edits like Tuesday kind of thing. Because I think, again, being ADHD, I didn't realize when I wrote, sometimes I would start stories but not finish them, or I would, just go a bit meandering in some of my points. I would go off topic. So we actually spent probably a month coming up with an outline. And then she would have preferred if I wrote the book chronologically, but I just would pick whatever easiest chapter I could think of to write and send it to her each week. And that's the only way I could write the book, to be honest. With the refresh for Chill and Prosper, I didn't need a coach for that one. I was supposed to just do a light sprinkle edit and add some case studies, and I ended up rewriting almost the whole thing. And for that, I don't know if I just didn't need the accountability for that one because I had such a tight deadline. I just kind of got on with it. I'm doing a writing course at the moment. It's a memoir course, and that's monthly, where we have to get on the calls together and read our chapters out aloud to each other, which sounds really painful, and it was at the start. But I would actually, I'd prefer weekly, because I don't do any writing on that project between the calls. So yeah, I do need a lot of either a massive big deadline or accountability. Otherwise, it's not that don't think about it. It's just not on my radar, and other more important things come in unless I've got that deadline. And sometimes I send it in like 5 minutes before the deadline for that monthly one.
Love it. I've also got a copy of Get Hitched Lucky Bitch as well that you
do?
I think I'd heard about it before, but you did it as an April Fool's thing. I think it was last year or something you put it out. You were like, that's it. I'm giving up money mentorship. I'm going to get into relationships. Grab a copy of my book, and I was like, oh my God, I have to do that.
Well, actually, my first ever book was about internet dating. And so it was when I was 22, 23, I was doing internet dating, and I was like, God, people suck at this. I'm going to write a book about it. And so that was my first ever book. And back then too, you couldn't just sell an ebook by yourself. I had to go through an ebook broker because PDFs were so big, and there was no software to be able to just sell an ebook. So yeah, it's always like, write what you know, right? Find a problem, write what you know.
Yeah, love it. So what then, you've worked with ebook brokers, back in the days when PDFs were gigantic. Then with Lucky Bitch, you pre-sold it and then got into self-publishing. And then you managed to move on to actually getting a traditional publishing deal. So would you mind sharing with our listeners and our audience a little bit about how you have found in terms of experiencing the different types of publishing and some of the pros and cons of each, because I think that's one of the things that most people feel like there's either glamour involved in getting a traditional book publishing deal, but they might not necessarily be comparing that to things that they would do when they're self-publishing, or they might, think that it's better to self-publish than, and so, yeah, if you could just give us a little bit of info about your experience, that'd be amazing.
Sure. So yeah, I've self-published the first 2 books, and I think what's really key to understand, the only reason I got my traditional deal is because I was regularly doing newsletters and regularly creating content, because I didn't know that there was a Hay House commissioning editor on my newsletter list. And she was kind of just reading it for about a year, and she contacted me about, I think it was 2015, and said, I read your self-published books. I love your newsletter and things. I'd love to pitch you to my boss. Can you put together a bit of a proposal of, just your social media stats and, that kind of stuff? Not necessarily a pitch for a new idea back then. And I went, yeah, great. And I was so excited. And I put it together, and her boss passed because they didn't like the word bitch. And totally fair enough, right? I was like, yep, I totally get it. But even just going through that process was so interesting, because yes, of course, I'd always thought maybe one day a traditional book deal, but I had a lot of imposter syndrome around it. And so even putting that together, I kind of went, actually, I really do want this. But I knew that my social media numbers, my platform, weren't big enough for them to take a chance on me. And it was just one of those things where I just went, it just is what it is. That's the reality of publishing. And so I went, great, thank you so much. Look, do you mind if I contact you in a couple of years, if I've got any new ideas, or if, my platform's bigger? And she was like, yeah, of course. So I went away and deliberately changed a few things. So one, I actually changed the name of my company from Lucky Bitch back just to my name, Denise DT. And it wasn't just for Hay House. We were starting to get a lot of Facebook ads rejected and things like that. And so, my emails were getting filtered by people's spam folders. Things were just getting a little bit, a bit more prudish, I think, a little bit. But also I went, you know what, I am going to build my social numbers. And I really deliberately went and put effort into that. And as you know, sometimes when you put effort into something and you measure it, that's when things grow, right? So 2 years later, I went back to them and said, look, I've got an idea for a new book. It doesn't have bitch in the title. Here are all the things that I've done to, soften the things. I also had paid for an editor to kind of make Get Rich, Lucky Bitch and Lucky Bitch a little bit more Hay House friendly, a little bit more. So I'd paid for that myself. And I said, look, here's the new book idea. It's called Chillpreneur. It's about business. Here is my platform, which had grown substantially since the last time we've spoken. And also, if you want to take on my 2 self-published books, I've done a rewrite of them, and here they are. So it was kind of a 3-book deal in one. The other thing for me, and just to be really transparent too, I didn't really push for a big advance. And I think I kind of went in it with my eyes wide open, because I knew for me, books are not necessarily my biggest earner. My courses are where I really make, millions of dollars. And so I was like, I want to be able to get my books into traditional bookstores and have bigger distribution of this business card for my business. And so I got a $30,000 advance, which isn't, huge in the publishing world. And that was for all 3 books, really just for the Chillpreneur book. The others, I didn't get an advance at all, but it meant that I earned money from day one from those books, which still sell, each and every day. So that was the process. Now, in terms of pros and cons, I think the biggest one for me is speed to market, and as someone with ADHD, as someone who just gets shit done in my business really quickly, having a 2-year lead time is a little excruciating. One, because I feel like sometimes language changes in that time. It can shift and change. Sometimes you change, but also just the impatience of working on a project for that long can just be a bit painful. So there's that. I think though, it's really hard to get that complete distribution yourself. Like I can go into Big W, which is a big store in Australia, like Walmart, and see my books on the shelf. Like that's really hard for me to do as a self-published author. Seeing my book in an airport, that was totally a highlight for me, of going, oh my God, I'm in an airport. And I think because I used to travel so much, it felt really legit to be like, that's my book in an airport. And also because their lists are so much smaller, the fact that they choose you to be in when they can't choose that many books, especially in nonfiction. It was just, that was really, really cool. And I really love working with Hay House for another reason, is that they have events and conferences. And so being able to go speak at their conference, something that I don't have to organize, is really great as well. So I've really enjoyed the process. I just think you have to go into it with your eyes wide open. I didn't like the cover that they chose for Chillpreneur, so I was really happy that we could have another go at it with Chill and Prosper. We get along really well editing wise. Like they never, say you can't have something in, which is really good. They're really open and open-minded, I think, to that. They don't ask me to take out swearing or anything. So that's really fun. I just think the hardest thing for me is the speed to market. And, they're already asking for my next book, like as in 2 years' time. And I'm just like, but I just gave you a book. I'm just like, so that can be tricky. And also the other thing too, I don't think a lot of authors realize, is that you mostly have to do your own marketing. You really do. Because a lot of publishing houses, they make money from like one or two authors. That's who makes them most of their money. And so, like you have to do most of your own marketing, even with a publisher.
Yeah, that was one of the really interesting things. We had a guest a few weeks ago who used to work in traditional publishing as well, and we were talking about the antitrust case between Simon & Schuster and Penguin Random House in the US. And how one of the things that had come out was about the marketing budgets and how little is actually spent on marketing books, and that something like out of 50-something thousand books that are published a year, only 29,000 of those books sell less than I think it was something ridiculous, like less than 12 copies, less than 1,000 copies. And it is, I think people don't understand that traditional publishing is not the way that it used to be, where they're going to send you on a book tour and you're going to have all of this amazing marketing done for you and everything, that it is still on you as the author to put yourself out there, to build your own platform, to make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do to get your book out there and top of mind. And that's something that anybody who follows you will notice, that you regularly are promoting all of your titles. At the moment, obviously, Chill and Prosper has been big on your rotation because it's just been re-released. But I have no doubt that probably the next one that'll be up will be Get Rich Lucky Bitch again. You'll be promoting, even Lucky Bitch or whatnot as we're coming closer to Christmas, maybe Black Friday, who knows. But you do regularly promote each of your books.
Absolutely. And, I organized my own book tour. I did a book tour in the States and I did one in Australia. And but what was really good, actually, Hay House organized one of the book chains that is all around Australia to come and sell books at my event, so I didn't have to. And the way I did it, actually, I did it in cinemas, because I was trying to think, what's the quickest, easiest way to do a book tour. And so I know the marketing manager for Event Cinemas, and she just organized it in one day for me. So I went there's a cinema in every city in Australia, there's parking, it's usually near a big shopping center. And then Hay House got in touch with, what's that book chain? QVB or something like that. I can't remember.
QBD or something.
Yes, exactly. I always think QVB as in the building, but it's
QBD.
Yeah, QBD, yeah. And so they came to every single of my book tour events at the cinema, and they sold books. Because for me, I was like, oh God, having to do a book tour, I have to bring, an assistant with me, or I'll have to bring someone to do it. And instead, I just turned up at the cinema. They just gave me a microphone gave everyone some popcorn. It was so easy, but I did a 14-city book tour. And yeah, but I had to do that. I had to do that myself. I had to sell the tickets myself, all of those things. And I think I do see people get disappointed that, they get a book deal, that's going to be their money, that's how they're going to get rich. And I also think people don't understand how much the money is spread out too, for that. So that 30,000 advance was 10,000 on signing, but it took 6 months for us from when we talked about the book to actually signing the contracts because of all the back and forths and how slow publishing works. So I got that first 10,000 6 months after we spoke about it. You get the second 10,000 when you hand in the manuscript, which was like 9 months later. And then you get the third bit when the book actually gets published, which again was almost 9 months later. And then you only get paid your royalties every 6 months. And of course you have to pay out the things. So, it's one of those things, the money is so spread out, which is why it's so important for authors and writers to have other forms of income, whether it's a course or speaking or something else, affiliate income, something else, because otherwise, it's hard to see people who are writers and they're broke because they don't realize that it's a long game.
Yeah, well, I mean, $30,000 over 2 years, because 6 months plus 9 is 2 years. That's like $15,000 a year. I mean, that's not exactly a living wage, right?
Exactly. So, but for me, I can do it because I've gone into it going, okay, well, I've got my courses, I do speaking, I do all of this other stuff. For me, books they're a business card, but they're also a way to capture, like a philosophy or ideas of who you are or what you want to talk about in a particular time. They don't have to be living, breathing things, which I do struggle with a little bit, which is why I will still self-publish in the future, because there are some books that I want to bring out that I do want to be able to quickly change if I need to, or to quickly update. But, you just have to go into it with your eyes wide open, I think.
I love that. And I love that you just said that despite having traditional publishing deals, that you're still interested in doing self-publishing and being able to just get things out there, because it doesn't have to be a one or the other kind of game.
Exactly. Absolutely. I think it's a little bit of a juggle sometimes with, timelines and stuff. I can't bring out a self-published book at the same time as a traditionally published book. But I'm working on quite a few series at the moment. So because of what I do with my money mindset program, a lot of people will say to me, yeah, but what about my profession? Like I've got, our profession's got real money blocks that are insurmountable, Denise. And, 80% of it really is the same for every profession, but there is those 20% nuances that I really want to talk to. And so I've done a money mindset for natural health practitioners, money mindset for writers, which hopefully will come out before Christmas. Money mindset for body workers is one we're working on at the moment. And I just really want to get that dialed in, the process of that, that I could write them very quickly, because, like it's really fun to step into a profession for a little while, like money mindset for dance teachers. Money mindset for the construction industry. Sometimes people invite me to come and speak to their particular industry, and I find it so fascinating, but I want to capture that in a book, because then, all roads lead to my Money Bootcamp eventually, but it's speaking to those particular problems. And also for me too, it helps me when I'm a little bit random to not break my business. I'm just like, no, go and write a book. Keep, when you're in that squirrel brain, I'm like, go write a book about a different profession. And then it will all
like
lead
maverick
to
problems.
It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. But
Jenny
what?
and I
do
are both mavericks.
Oh, you are? Oh, okay. So you understand the shiny object syndrome problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Jenny is also a celebrity romantic, and I'm a nurturer accumulator. So.
Oh, yeah, cool. Good. Yeah, you've covered a lot of bases there together.
Yeah, like almost all of them.
Definitely.
But, yeah, no, I love how in Sacred Money Archetypes recently you were talking about literally that, like all roads lead to Money Bootcamp, instead of just finding the shiny things, and you're saying like Mark would bring you these ideas and be like, oh, hey, how about we do this? And you're like, okay, well, how can we sell more boot camp? How can we do this? And as authors and writers, particularly as nonfiction writers, this is something that I think is really important for business owners to think about what they're writing and how it leads back to what they're doing in their businesses. Right? And like, how can you make money out of this? And this is something that Jenny and I are both particularly passionate about, is actually making money as writers, but it doesn't have to specifically just be through royalties. It can be through like, how are you going to make money in your programs, and how are you going to leverage the book to actually make dollars in your business?
Oh, absolutely. And there are so many different avenues. And I don't think we should be ashamed of that as writers, to think, no, I have to be a pure writer, because that doesn't serve anybody, you know. And there's so much luxury in having spaciousness to be able to write and create. And that's really hard if you are struggling for money. It's really hard if you have to take on a day job that you don't like. So then you can, you know, write in those little moments. And so there's always something that we can create. And it doesn't have to be a big, you know, teaching program like mine. It could be some templates or some extra resources on top of your book. It can be like affiliate links, you know, it can be resources like that. But it is a slow game, you know, just rely on royalties for your book. You know, traditionally published, I might make $2 a book. You know, I might make $4 a book for self-publishing, but there are lots of other value adds that you can do. Then you can have a way more abundant life and have a lot more time for writing.
Love it. Now, Jenny, I think you had another question for Denise as well about introvert myths. Is that right?
Yeah. The one myth, Denise. What's the one myth that you would like to see dissolved that has to do with introverts? Because I think that what you've talked about today, a lot of these things it can deter other introverts from stepping up and stepping into being in the spotlight, right? And like you mentioned, having to market yourself as an author, having to go and put these book tours together and put themselves out there. And you mentioned the imposter syndrome, which I know as an introvert, I had that too. And you mentioned a lot of things that may actually be myths, right? That would keep either an introvert from doing what they truly want to do, or somebody giving advice to an introvert saying, because unfortunately, I've had that advice before of, unless you do this extroverted way, you're not going to be successful. So what do you think that one big myth would be that you would like to see dissolved?
Or one, I mean, I'm going to do two, but one is that you have to be on, that you have to be on all the time, instead of realizing that it's like this, you know, you can do it in your own way. And as I said, I batch a lot of my social media. I batched even my book tour, so I didn't have to do it, you know, over the whole year. And you do it on your terms. You absolutely do it on your terms. And even Nigella Lawson, who is a cookbook author and famous chef in the UK, she came to my town on her book tour, and she just sat on a couch and chatted. And that gave me permission to do the same thing for my book tour, instead of feeling like it had to be whiz bang. I didn't read any of my book on the book tour because that made me really nervous. So it's realizing that you can do the things on your terms. There's so many different ways to market yourself. If you don't like being on camera, you can do voice. If you don't like voice, you can write, which is what, you know, you're here to do. There's so many different ways you can do it. The other myth, I think, is that if you're an introvert, you can't also be confident. And I think, yeah, like I actually felt like for a long time, imposter syndrome of being an introvert, because people would go, but you're so confident. I'm like, yeah, but it's got nothing to do with confidence. It's really, for me, it literally is how I get my energy. You know, I do a lot of videos, I do a lot of podcasts, but it's me in a room. It's not me with 100 people watching. And when they watch, I'm not there. So I'm fine with them. I'm fine with people watching my stuff as long as I don't have to be in the room while they do it. And so you can be quietly confident in your work. You can have imposter syndrome, but still do it anyway. But it's not just about being shy and, never wanting to put your stuff out there. It's just doing it on your terms, I think is the important distinction.
Yeah, two really, really important things, because I have heard so many times how introverts are not confident, or people even maybe misunderstanding what being an introvert is and talking about how they can help introverts become more confident, things like that.
Totally.
And I'm a massive introvert. Like I hope that plans get canceled all the time so that I
all
can
the
stay.
time.
Like, just please let something happen and this event be canceled, right? So that I could stay home and be in my pajamas all day. So that doesn't have anything to do with me being confident in the work that I do, because I am extremely confident in it. And I think that for me, that would probably be, Denise, my number one myth is that being introverted and being confident, like, it's not the same thing. You're not shy and not confident. You just need to take care of your energy, and you need to recoup, and you need to rest and recharge in a different way than other people, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Also, the doing things on your own terms. I love what you said about the book tour too, how you didn't have to do it all together, and you even did that on your terms, and how you sat on a couch versus being up, on stage. And people think, because they see other successful people doing it that way, that is the way that it needs to be done to be successful. And what you're saying is, no, not so much.
No. And some of that you learn through trial and error, right? I like doing those big bursts of work where I might do, lots of filming in one go. But even on the book tour, I made a mistake on the first one. I'd have people go, oh, I'd love to come and hang out with you in your dressing room before, before going on stage. And I'd be like, yeah, sure. And it would be, friends or whatever. And that was a big mistake too. Or realizing that people would be like, let's hang out after. I'd be like, no, that's okay. The other thing that I did was they weren't at night. They were during the day. Because for me, that was better for my energy. And I even did them midweek because, I was going to be away from my family. So that meant I probably could have sold more tickets if they were at night, on the weekend. But it was like this or nothing. It's like, I'm coming and it's going to be on a Wednesday from, I think it was 12 till 2 or something, like literally over lunchtime, or I'm not going to come. And it's not saying that in like a bitchy way, but it was just literally like, it just wouldn't exist if it wasn't on my terms. And I think sometimes we have to get better at realizing that. It's like, if I don't do it the way that works for me, this thing will not exist. And it can't help anybody if it doesn't exist.
Mm. Oh, it's so true too, because if you were to do it at night and you were to be exhausted, and then you weren't able to give it everything that you wanted to, and it wasn't able to be what you wanted it to be, what's the point? Right?
I'd be too tired.
Why do it? Why do it to yourself? Because it's not going to be what you wanted it to be anyway. And so,
exactly. Yeah. And it's almost then doing it on your terms, even though really the output was the same, the 2-hour output was the same. But there was something about, if I do it at night and I'm doing it and I don't want to, it takes longer to recover from. Whereas doing it where I was like, this is my comfort zone, this is exactly how I want to do it in an environment I feel comfortable with, I actually didn't need a ton of as much recovery time for it. It was really interesting. It's sometimes it's the boundaries thing that is exhausting too, right? It's compromising that's the exhausting thing for us, not necessarily the people or the output. It's that plus I really don't want to be here, or I'm missing my jammies for this, or something like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so true. So true.
Snuggle time on the couch with Albie.
Exactly. I would love to actually take him on tour one time. I feel bad because I've got 2 dogs, but he's definitely my favorite. But he, I'm doing a retreat soon at the farm, and I was like, I wonder if I can just bring Albie along to the farm. He can be the therapy dog for everyone at the retreat.
I'm pretty sure he probably will be, because I cannot think of anybody, especially in boot camp, who's like, oh my God, yes, I so want to go on a rose farm retreat with Denise. That wouldn't be like, oh my God, Albie's there.
Yes, that's true. But actually, I want to tell you something that happened last week, which was really fun. I had 3 or 4 days of filming that I had to do, and I just finished a lot of work and filming. I didn't have a lot of time to create the scripts for the teleprompter, which I love doing. I love just sitting and reading the scripts. So I invited some people to the farm to ask me questions for content, so I could have people to bounce off of. And it was really fun. And I think, again, doing it on my terms was really fun too. But it was interesting because normally at an event, I wouldn't be talking about myself the whole time. I'd be like, well, what do you think? And, set really good boundaries on those retreats. But it was just a really interesting way to create a lot of content without having to do a lot of preparation. It was fascinating. And I actually didn't need a lot of time to recover from that. Again, because I felt like it was a very gentle invitation on my terms, in my space. It was really cool.
So just while you're talking about how you love script writing, right, for when you do your filming, do you ever find that you repurpose those scripts for other written content, like articles or social media posts or anything like that? Or do you find that it's just the process of writing and repeating and leaning into the message that then you actually don't need to repurpose what you've got and you create something new? Or do you love repurposing as much as batching?
I do love repurposing. For my course content, I find that it doesn't need a lot of changing when I re-record it, like say 2 years later. It's just sometimes little tweaks. But actually, when I go into the podcast studio, I often go back to my old website, like 10 years ago. I have to go to the Wayback Machine for it, because I was a very prolific blog writer in my first couple of years of business. And so I'll go back to those and I will repurpose them just by, I won't read it out loud because my podcasts are very casual. But I find that sometimes, especially if you're doing nonfiction stuff, right, there's only so much you can innovate on, right? And what the innovation is new stories, new nuances that you come up with. So I encourage that for everybody. Go back to your older content and just see how you can refresh it, make it current for what's happening now, put some more up-to-date stories in it. But do that, because you don't need to reinvent it all the time. Also, as your audience grows and changes, some of those people haven't seen that earlier content. And so this week we put out an article I wrote about my first year in business, and I probably wrote that 8 years ago, and people needed to see it because sometimes they're like, oh, Denise, you're so successful, you've been so successful for a long time, you don't get what it's like for me. And so to be able to show them that and say, well, this is exactly what I was going through, was very motivating for people because they wanted to see those early days. And, I wouldn't be able to dredge that up from my memory, to be honest. So I'm glad I captured it.
I have to say that's definitely one of the awesome things about the bonuses for Money Bootcamp is the 10-day get rich, like do it quick, lucky bitch.
You were going to say that. I hate it so much. It's so old and janky.
But that's the thing though. It's like 12 years old or so, like 8 years old. I think it's from 2012.
Yes.
But I think you said it was one of the first times you did the things and you just filmed it on your iPad and you just winged it as you went. But the reason it's so amazing, the reason I think it's so powerful for so many lucky bees is because it's that validation of, it doesn't matter how polished your videos are now and how amazing it is now. It's like everybody starts at the same point. Everybody starts, with crappy video and just making it up as they go along and working it out. And it's the process of just continuing to do it over time. Actually, like, finished is better than perfect.
Oh my God, absolutely. And I do see people get so perfectionist about their first course, and it's never going to be your forever thing. You know, as I said, I've updated all of my courses every, year, every 2 years. And they have gotten more polished, but they're still, the content's actually still based on very much those first ones, because that's the heart that you're bringing in. You can always increase the production values, but just share what you know with people, and they can see that, they can feel that you want to help them. And I even say to people, like, God, the phones now are so much better than like
they were 10 years ago.
Cameras. Exactly. So it's like, God, in my day it was like, crazy having to try and do all the things. It really is so easy. There really isn't much of an excuse, but it's your resistance that's going to be the hard thing. And that's true for books too, right? Like writing, you just sit down and freaking type, mash keyboard, but it's the resistance that we have. And it's not like that ever gets to a point where you have no resistance. I wish there was a time. And so we just have to choose. We have to decide that we're ready, and we just have to do it.
Yeah, such good advice. I have been talking to several friends in publishing recently, and they're talking about how specifically when you're writing your first book, you kind of get to that 10 to 15,000 word mark where you're far enough in that you feel like you're actually starting to get some traction, but now you can actually see the mountain that's in front of you because you are 15,000 words in. If you're aiming for like 50,000 words, you're like, oh my God, I've still got 35,000 words to go. Like, what am I going to do?
Well, I heard a really great quote about this. Edmund Hillary, who was the first, Westerner to climb Mount Everest. He said, it's not the mountain we have to conquer, it's ourselves. And that is so true for being in business, being an entrepreneur, being an author, being a creative. It's so just our own stuff that we have to conquer.
Yeah. So feel the fear, do it anyway, feel the resistance, like, just take that deep breath and keep taking one more step forward, right? Write one more sentence, one more word, one more paragraph, one more page.
Exactly. And enroll someone else in that, whether it is a coach, whether it's a business bestie or a writing buddy, because it's so much easier when you're not accountable just to justify not doing it and not putting it out there. But as soon as you get accountable, whether it's like I did, just to say to people, hey, my book's coming out, and they believed me, and then I was like, shit, I have to do it now. All that stuff really helps.
So, and I did want to touch on that because you mentioned it earlier, and I know I've heard you say it before, but the imposter syndrome you struggled with when you were first stepping up as a writer and as an author and actually taking on the mantle of authorship, and some of the strategies you put in place to actually start embodying that. Would you please
Absolutely.
share some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a meeting in a sec, but it's just with my team. So I'll just send her a quick note and just say that I'll be 10 minutes. Yeah, I still have imposter syndrome. I don't know if that surprises anybody, but I still feel like I've somehow conned Hay House into giving me a book deal. I feel like it's, when people say, oh, you got three book deal with Hay House, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not real. It's not real. Like, I just kind of, conned them into it. So yeah, I still have it. I still have it. And I think I just have to ignore it enough just to go, I'm just going to do it anyway. I don't know. There's no real good answer for it, I think, sometimes. I still find it weird that people call me an author.
But you did things like changing your email signature and things like that, right?
Yeah, I did. I put, Denise Duffield-Thomas, author of Lucky Bitch, when I was still writing it, because seeing that really did help. And, that's why I put it in my bio. That's why I talk about it when I introduce myself, because it's one of those things that's actually easier to tell people than I'm a money mindset mentor. People go, what the hell is that? But everyone understands writer. And so I find that actually saying it to people helps with the imposter syndrome, because they just go, oh, you're a writer. What books do you write? And they just believe you without any hesitation that you're a writer.
You should try telling people that you're a lunar business strategist sometime.
There you go. I love it. Well, people are really into stuff like that now too. So yeah, there's no real good answer. It's just, I think, to realize that everybody has it. So what? It's like everyone has imposter syndrome. So what? You're just not going to write your book? I think that's the thing where I just go, yeah, I don't feel like a writer, but who cares? I'm just going to do another one anyway. And I just know that even though I wouldn't say I'm a writer with good habits. I don't say, I'm not necessarily a prolific writer yet. I'm going to work on it. But it's just like, but I know I need to, like it's same with this other book that I'm writing, my memoir. It's like, it won't leave me alone. So I know I have to do it. And I know that I have all these desires to write all the time. So I have to honor that, even though I don't always feel like, the best writer or anything like that. It's just like, I know I've got to, so I've got to.
I love that. It does become quite a compulsion, doesn't it, to feel like you need to put your message out there.
Exactly. And that's why I was fine with this year being a busy production year and video year, because I know I'm creating space for next year to be a busy writing year. And actually, I don't know if you were on this, the call, Tracey, with the lady on SMA who said she writes her romance books in like 2 days.
No, I missed that one.
So it was a lady, and she was just like, typical ruler, right? She's like, oh, I just don't really have anything that I could share with people. I don't have anything I could put into a course. All I do is, she's like, oh, I've just got my real estate investments, and, I write these romance books, and I like write one a month, and I've got this whole process where I like write it in 2 days, where I just walk around, and everyone's going, what? What? And she's like, oh yeah, I've got like a whole system, and like I've got a whole team now that just like takes my things. And everyone's like, well, can you do a course? Can you do a book? Can you do a retreat about that? Like, and she's like, oh, does that have value? Yes. So I just think there's so many times we discount what we know, but I'm like, I need a system like that where I can just write one of these books a week for different professions. Or I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's all I want to do. And also I aspire in the future to experiment with genres. Like, I would love to try my hand at writing romance or something like that, because I know that I've got so much to learn. Like I think I can write nonfiction, but like writing a memoir is really hard. And like then learning a new skill to write romance would be so much fun for my brain to do. So and part of that too is because I have my rose farm. I was saying to a friend who's in TV production, I was like, oh, can you just write a TV show about, like, I don't know, a lady who inherits a rose farm and she has all these sexy adventures with people. And she's like, and I'm like, well, fuck, I'll have to write it. Because I was like, be set at my farm. But I'm like, that would be so much fun, One day.
Screenwriting, that's going to be a new thing. Didn't you say you were writing a movie too? That was the thing after your honeymoon, your year of honeymoon things, you were going to make a movie about it.
Yes, so that's part of the memoir for me is, and it's turned into much more than I thought. I thought I was going to write about winning the honeymoon competition. I write about this in my first book, those of you who don't know. Won a honeymoon competition with my husband, had to get married 87 times in 6 months. And that's what I thought I was going to write about. But actually the memoir is about how like my childhood and how leading up to that was actually a really hard experience for me, because I had so much trauma and so much, like forced independence, and I never wanted to get married. And suddenly I was trapped for 6 months having to confront all of my commitment issues, generational dysfunction. And, and behind the scenes, it was a real disaster of a trip. So I always knew that it could be a really funny movie or something like that. But actually, I have to write the memoir first and really get for me what it's actually about. And that's been really challenging. But I would absolutely love to turn it into a movie and a musical, because I'm really into musicals. So it's almost like as I'm writing it, I'm trying to envision what the scenes would be like and what the songs would be for the parts of the musical. So that's why it's been a long process. But hopefully once this busy year is over, I can do more of a weekly commitment for that. As I said, monthly is not cutting it for my procrastination tendencies.
Yeah. And you and Mark are now so deeply married that you can never split up. Like
which
87
is challenging.
times is a huge, huge commitment to marry somebody
Absolutely.
87 times.
It absolutely is. And he has his own commitment issues and he has his own stuff that he brought into that. So it's not so simple as going, oh, we went to here, oh, we went to New York. It's much more layered, and it's challenging me as a writer to have to write like that instead of, now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, nonfiction's so easy. You just tell people what to do. I'm like, now I'm like, oh, that's a piece of piss now. Whereas writing a memoir, it's like so much more layered to that. I'm like, oh, this is challenging. So yeah, it's good to switch up genres a little bit for a little bit more, I don't know, imposter syndrome. Yeah.
And then as the kids get older, you can do, like the money mindset for children books and tweens.
Yes, I actually think that is one of my next books, but not from a place of being an expert. I think, because I hate when people write, they're like, oh, I've got married and now I'm going to write about conscious sex. And you go, oh, it's been a minute, friend. Or they've had one baby and it's like, oh, and that's totally usually me. I'm like, I'll learn something, I'll teach it. But actually yeah, exactly. But for the kid and money book, I actually think I can write it now because I'm writing it because I've met tens of thousands of people now and they've told me their money stories. So it's almost like, here are all the stories that people have told me are traumatic for them. How can we avoid doing those for our own kids rather than saying, oh, my kids are perfect, because my kids are going to have their own money stuff, right? Like they're going to have their own money mindset issues. So I'm by no means an expert on money and kids, but I think that's where I can really add value, is to say, look at all these traumatic stories we've heard. Let's choose something better collectively together. And, and there will be some cool things in there. Like I did a photo shoot at the farm recently and I needed to buy a whole bunch of fake flowers to add to, the photo shoot. And each one has a little sticker. So I paid my daughter to rip the stickers off each flower. And there was like hundreds of flowers. And I said to her, I'll pay you 20 cents a flower. And she's 8. She was like, 50 cents. And I'm like, and she would not budge. It was like an hour-long negotiation. I finally got it down to 40 cents a flower. And then I said to her, for each label, put it in a bucket, and that's going to be your proof of how many you did. And then we got to the end. She's got this bucket of labels, and she said, well, pay me my money. I said, no. You have to send me an invoice. And she's like, great, you count all the labels and tell me how much I owe you. And I was like, no. You've done the work. You've done the work now, you count them. And so she sent me an invoice, like a proper invoice that Mark helped her to put together. And then literally every hour, she's like, have you paid my invoice yet? Have you paid my invoice? And I'm like, so I can bring some stories like that of saying, here are some things that I have tried, but I really think it's about, here's our collective trauma around money, and how can we avoid that for the next generation? And also, how can we be the best role models we can be for our kids by living our passions, by talking about our passions, by giving ourselves permission, space to be creative, to be creatives, to be entrepreneurs, and to really be powerful in our own selves around money. I think that's the lesson. Yeah.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, Jenny, do you have any last questions you want to ask Denise before we wrap up and let her get to her meeting?
No questions. I just want to say what an honor it was, Denise. I really, truly appreciate you coming and talking to us and sharing all your introvert secrets and advice and all of that. So just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you so much for helping me share the word of my books and things like that. Thank you. I love it. It's going on the screen. That looks so cool. So yeah, thanks, Tracey. Thanks, Jen. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody,
you so
listening.
much, Denise. If you guys are watching live or if you're catching the replay and you would like to grab a copy of Chill and Prosper, you can grab it at denisedt.com/prosper. The link is here on the screen.
And it's available all over the place
as well. But yeah, Amazon, Book Depository, Waterstones, wherever you buy your books, you can
Audible,
find it online.
paperback, Kindle. All the places.
All the platforms, and I've probably got all of them.
Yay. Love it.
Yeah, fangirling here totally. So thank you so much, Denise. We really, really appreciate you making the time to come and talk to our audience. I know that they have thoroughly enjoyed having you here with us today. And some of our audience actually do have it in paperback, and they've got Chillpreneur in the ebook. So, we're all about all of the formats and all of the versions.
Love it.
So
Love it.
thank you
Thanks,
much for being
guys.
here, and we appreciate you. Guys, we will be back next week with another episode of the Women Writing Intentionally show, and we look forward to talking all things publishing and writing with you again soon. So thank you so much.